So there I was, sitting in the police interrogation room accused of vehicular homicide. I had requested a pen and piece of paper, which I had ripped into 2 pieces and wrote on each of them. I did not kill my mother on 1 piece of paper. I did kill my mother on the other piece. I tried explaining to Detective Jenkins that we were living in 2 separate realities, an obvious blag on my part, and he didn't understand what I was trying to say to him, which is when I requested that he bring me 2 glasses, one full of water and the other empty. The detective paused the interview tape and left the room. I could hear him laughing with one of his colleagues just outside the door. We'll see who's laughing in a minute. After a short wait, he brought me the 2 glasses I asked for. Thank you, Detective.
This better be good.
Oh, it will be. The detective continued the recording.
Interview commenced at 7:51 p.m. Mr. Clark is going to demonstrate his previous statement. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Thank you, Detective. As I said, we're both living in 2 separate versions of reality, both of which are in the process of colliding into each other, which will have devastating effects on the universe and life as we know it. You can see there are 2 glasses on the table. One contains water, the other does not. These represent each version of reality in which we both live. You are currently living here, in the glass full of water. I use the condensation on the full glass to attach the piece of paper which says I killed my mother, then did the same thing with the second piece of paper before transferring it into the empty glass. And I am in this version of reality. Now, as you can see, one glass is full. The water represents the facts. But if I pour the water into this glass, I said transferring the water into the glass labeled, I did not kill my mom. This is where the facts really are, Detective. Now, notice something. Focus on the 2 glasses and what just happened there.
I will not be made a fool of, Mr. Clark.
No, not at all, Detective. Just focus for a second. And with that, we both focused on the water in the 2 glasses. After about a minute or 2, I picked up the glass. You see, Detective, I really didn't kill my mom, I said, drinking the water.
Mr. Clark, you are making a mockery of me and of this whole interview.
The detective shouted, jumping up from his seat.
Get up, now.
The detective stopped the interview tape immediately, grabbed me by my arm, and marched me back to my holding cell. See you again soon, Dick Jenkins, I said, saluting the detective and smirking smugly. I lay down in my cold, miserable cell, on the pathetic excuse for a mattress, and tried to get some sleep, a task I found quite difficult given where I was, hearing screams from the cell next door.
Hey, let me out! Let me out of here! I'm being flooded in!
The man in the cell would shout.
Simon, is that you? Why have you got your dog in here, boy?
He continued, clearly on some kind of drug. Eventually, I did manage to fall asleep after God knows how long, just to be woken up by the sound of that shouting again.
Let me out! I haven't done it! Simon, shut up! I'm trying to speak to the cop.
Dude, shut the fuck up. Some people are trying to sleep.
It's not a pit bull, it's a staffy.
The man just continued. After a good 20 or so minutes, the shouting had stopped and I finally managed to get myself some shut-eye, only to be woken up the next day to the sound of a bolted door being unlocked. I was still in that cell. Mr. G, how's the head? The officer asked. Yeah, fine, I said in response, slightly puzzled. You're free to go, just go to the front desk and collect your things, have the officer at the desk sign you out, and head through the door to your right, he instructed. I'm free to go? I thought to myself, heading down the corridor. It worked. It worked. As I walked down the corridor, I could hear raised voices coming from one of the interview rooms.
Sergeant, this kid ran his own mother over, and you're just letting him walk?
Said one of the voices I assumed was the detective. I'm sorry, you must be mistaken. There's no record of a hit and run occurring at all in the past 6 months, the sergeant replied.
Sergeant, sir, I brought him in myself last night.
I quickly walked past the room from where the voices were coming, and I couldn't help but wonder, are they talking about me? How does he remember? I took my last few steps to the front desk and was greeted with,
Good morning, Mr. Clark. How's the head today?
Yeah, it's fine. Why do you ask?
Don't you remember why we brought you in? Drunk and disorderly, Mr. Clark. And what a staggering reading it was. You're lucky to be alive.
Why's that then?
Well, in all my years on the force, I've never seen anyone blow about .21 on a breathalyzer, but you blew .46. Anything over .45 would have killed most people.
Wow, lucky me, I said sarcastically. Can I have my stuff now?
Here you go, Mr. Clark.
He said, handing me a clear bag containing my belongings. Thanks. Have a nice day, Constable, I said as I walked towards the exit. Walking through the big double doors with frosted glass panels, I was greeted by my best friend, Ian Sindem. I've known Ian for as long as I can remember. Shortly after my mother died, in my dimension, he was the first best friend I ever had. It was the second week of primary school. Since my father was never around, I moved in with my Nana, who kept me home from school for the first week, and during the second week, Ian was the one person who stood by me. After the death of my mother, I became somewhat shy, and being the quiet kid, this left me open to all kinds of bullying. They said I was a weirdo and a freak, but not Ian. Eventually, we went on to attend the same high school and college, and he's always lived within about 10 minutes of me. My whole life, he has always been there for me, and I couldn't thank him enough. How did you know I was here? I asked, somewhat confused.
Good night last night. Come on, let's get you home. I think I should drive.
And what is that supposed to mean?
Whoa there, buddy. Wind your neck in. I'm no snot-nosed cashier.
You what?
I said, did you forget to put your tampon in? Never mind, I was joking. Let's go.
I'm sure that's not what he said, I thought to myself as we left the police station. I couldn't believe my luck. I only spent one night in the cell, but it felt like a 15-year sentence in solitary confinement, and I was walking out 2 days after killing my mother. Well, sort of. In this dimension, I hadn't killed my mother. Oh crap, my mom. Just because I didn't kill her, that doesn't mean she's alive. I need to ask Ian. Knowing it wasn't something I could just come out with, I thought for a little while how I could ask. I needed to know if my mother was alive in this dimension, or this was all for nothing. We walked for a short while and arrived at a car park at the opposite end of the street.
Here we are. Right, get in.
Ian said, unlocking the car door. As we began driving, I couldn't help but wonder if my mom was alive in this dimension, and I couldn't work out the best way of asking Ian. He was never going to believe me, even if it was the truth. Hell, if I was in his position, I would think he was insane.
Something on your mind?
No, I was just thinking about last night. How drunk I must have been.
Drunk? You weren't drunk, Alex. You know what happened.
What do you mean?
You know exactly what I mean.
Listen, stop being so goddamn cryptic and cut to the bloody chase. I don't have time for your shit.
Well, it seems to me you have all the time in the world. And when things don't go to plan, you have a way of making it right.
Wait, what? I asked with a feeling of uneasiness. What are you talking about, Ian?
Dimensional jumping.
You know about that?
Of course I know. We've been friends since primary school. I know everything about you.
But how? I mean, I never told you.
Oh, but you did, in a manner of speaking. You see, you're the third Alex to come through this dimension, and that's not including Alex from here. You're all on your own little journeys. You're all looking for something. My Alex told me everything before he jumped. He was ill and was trying to beat it. The second Alex was searching for his mum, and the third Alex wanted to quit smoking. And now you.
There's more than one of me? I smoked? I was ill? Am I these versions of myself? My mind began to race. It seems that every time I jump to a new dimension, my mind is overrun with questions. I felt like I was going to lose my grip on reality. Focus, Alex. We have to find Mom.
Whoa, calm down, buddy. Take a deep breath.
Shut the hell up. Take me home now. Drive. Ian drove the rest of the way in silence and pulled up in my front drive. I swiftly exited the car and stood at the front door.
Lock the car.
Ian said, getting out of the passenger side. But you've got the... Why did you climb over and get out of the passenger side?
Lock the car and let us in the house. It's cold out here.
He replied, forcing the keys into my hand. After getting inside, I began to ask Ian just how much he knew about my situation, and if he knew anything of my mom's whereabouts. But he had no idea where my mom was. He was aware that I jumped dimensions, and why I was doing it. He knew everything from my previous jump and how I really came to be at the police station. He said that the Alex searching for his mom had been through exactly the same stuff, and due to my little outburst in the car, he figured I was the same Alex. No, I haven't told anyone else yet. In fact, I'm still quite shocked you know.
Well, not technically true. How did you get out of the cells?
Well, yeah, the detective, but, I haven't told anybody close to me anyway. I'm going to make coffee. Do you want one? I asked, heading to the kitchen.
Too early for a beer, then?
He jokingly asked. Just a bit, mate. It's only 1 in the afternoon. Do you want a coffee? I called.
Yeah, go on then.
I put the kettle on and set 2 cups on the side, putting the coffee and the milk into both. Do you want sugar? I shouted to Ian. There was no reply, just the sound of the kettle heating up and slowly coming to a boil. Do you want sugar? I shouted again. But still, no reply. I started walking towards the living room, wondering what it was that Ian was so captivated with that he couldn't answer a simple yes or no question. Ian, you ignorant little fuck! When I walked into the living room, Ian wasn't there. He had to walk past the kitchen to leave the house, and I didn't hear him walking upstairs to the bathroom. I couldn't hear a single thing, not even the sound of the kettle. I walked back into the kitchen to find the cups that I had set out onto the side were no longer there, and the kettle was almost empty and cold to the touch. What the hell's going on? I thought to myself. I called out to Ian, but got no reply. I figured it must be something to do with the jump. Of course that was it. That's the only thing that makes sense. I promptly filled the kettle and turned it on, not leaving the kitchen until I had made my coffee. Walking into the living room, coffee in hand, I placed my cup down by my computer and turned it on, lit my log fire, and turned on the TV before sitting down to surf the web. First, I head over to Facebook to message Ian to find out why he just bailed on me. But when I looked at my friends list, he wasn't there. So I typed his name into the search bar, but nothing. I took out my phone and looked through the contacts again. Ian wasn't there. That's strange. Why don't I have Ian on Facebook or in my phone? But I concluded that I must have jumped to a dimension where Ian isn't on Facebook yet. He was always behind on the latest fad in my dimension. Maybe he was the same here. I figured I'd see him at some point soon anyway, so I just have to convince him to sign up when I do. After coming to this conclusion, I decided to head over to Reddit and see if there was any new posts on the subreddits I was subscribed to. But my plans soon changed when I got onto the site. I tried signing in a number of times, but it said my password was incorrect. My password shouldn't be incorrect. It's always been the same as my Facebook password. I went to my email to try to reset my password, but every time I submit my new password, it said the rest link had expired. After about 20 minutes of playing around and trying to get into my account, I decided to just make a new account. After doing this, I went on to the dimensional jumping subreddit to find out if anybody else has had the problems that I've been having. It turns out this isn't a common thing. Nobody seemed to have experienced this after a jump. After sitting there and thinking about it, I started to think that maybe somebody who knew me decided it would be fun to mess with me. I wasn't even sure that I was jumping dimensions anymore. On one hand, I was arrested for killing a woman I know was my mother. I definitely burned my car, but now it's in my driveway, and I don't actually have a sister. But on the other hand, what if somebody set this subreddit up and is playing the elaborate prank? People don't just get away with running someone over. And the Reddit banner on dimensional jumping hasn't changed. 702, just as it always was. I started going over all the possible explanations in my head. Maybe it was Ian. That's how the cups were moved. Then he left. Maybe my account had been hacked. Maybe Ian knows someone on the police force and set it all up. Maybe he found me a fake sister and a woman who looks like my mom. Ian was always clever. Very clever. He must have something to do with this. Or maybe I'm just paranoid. I went back onto Reddit to ask for tips on finding proof that I was jumping, but decided against it. If this was a hoax, Ian would surely see my posts. That's when I noticed my inbox button. It had changed color. Green. Usually it's orange. And I'm pretty sure Ian can't change the code on the actual website. When I opened the message, I was both shocked and horrified. Somebody had replied to my post with one single word. Ian Syndham. I clicked on the user's name and checked out their overview. They've been on Reddit for over 5 years, and this was the only thing they had ever posted. Why have they just posted Ian's name? This made even less sense than my cups mysteriously disappearing along with Ian. I've only been on Reddit myself for a short while. There's no way this has anything to do with Ian. I tried to write back to the user. I wrote out a long message saying if this was Ian, it wasn't cool, and asking if it wasn't him, why did they write his name? How did they know him, and what he had to do with my current situation? But the minute I clicked send, I got "that user doesn't exist" error. And when I went back to my original post, the message had disappeared. I refreshed the page a couple of times. Maybe it was just a glitch. Or maybe Reddit was in the process of updating the site. That would explain why my inbox button was a different color to what I was used to. But no matter how much I clicked refresh, the message had gone. I clicked refresh one more time. That's when my computer shut itself down. All the electronics in my house turned off, and I was engulfed in complete darkness.
Alex,
A woman's voice echoed.
wake up.
I didn't know what the hell was going on, and I'm not ashamed to admit that. At that minute in time, I was completely and utterly terrified. The air around me began to get cold, and it felt like I was being watched by 1,000 pair of eyes.
Alex,
The voice echoed again as icy fingers gripped my arm in the darkness. "Who's there?" I screamed, jumping back. "What the hell are you? What's going on?" I began to get cold. Really, really cold. And it suddenly felt like I was no longer with my own body, but just a few feet behind, as if I was watching myself, haphazardly fumbling around in the darkness when my phone began to echo through the endless void. I reached into my pocket to pull my phone out, but when I did, there was no light coming from it. It was ringing, but there was no light. I started pressing buttons at random, anything to make the ringing stop. And then it did. "Hello?" I said, holding the phone up to my ear.
Alex, wake up.
I could hear the distorted voice of the woman.
Alex,
"Who are you?" I asked, but got no reply. Then I heard a familiar electronic screeching just like I did when I tried to call the emergency services. And at that moment, I heard Ian's voice.
Yeah, please, mate.
The darkness faded. The warmth of the air came rushing back, and suddenly I was back in my kitchen, staring down at 2 cups. "What's that?" I called.
I said yes, please. I'll have 2 sugars.
What the hell just happened? I wondered. Did I imagine everything that just went on? I went through to the living room, to where Ian's voice was coming from. But again, he wasn't there. "Now where have you gone?" I called out, heading back to the kitchen. As I walked through the door, I noticed the clock read 6:32 p.m. The sun outside my window was setting, and my house was completely silent. At least this time my cups hadn't disappeared. Given the time, I decided against coffee and opted for a chamomile tea instead. I'd had a rough and somewhat confusing day, and I just wanted to get an early night and walk out what went on when I wake up and could think straight. Taking my chamomile tea upstairs, I sunk into my warm, comfy bed and lay there sipping my herbal nightcap, letting its calming effects soothe me and drift off into a pleasant night's sleep. After finishing my tea and placing my cup on my bedside table, I rested my head on my pillow, closed my eyes, and within 10 minutes fell asleep. I was ripped back into a waking state sometime later by the sound of somebody walking around in my house. I jumped out of bed and landed face first on the floor. The house went silent while I lay there. After a couple of seconds, the sound of somebody walking around returned. I got up and started frantically searching for something to defend myself. In my dimension, I usually kept a baseball bat by my bed. But here, nothing. I could use the empty cup, but what good will that do? There were various items I could use, but nothing I could use effectively, should my life depend on it. Or so I thought. That's when I noticed the empty beer bottle which must have rolled under my bed. After grabbing the bottle, I quietly left the sanctuary of my bedroom and slowly made my way downstairs. As I got to the bottom of the stairs, I could hear rustling coming from the living room. Shit, shit, shit! My mind raced. I'm gonna die, I am going to die. I took a deep breath to calm my nerves. Right, Alex, calm yourself. It's you or them, I muttered silently. He must have heard me. Whoever it was in my living room started heading towards the door. I took another deep breath and smashed the empty bottle in the face of my intruder as he began to exit the living room. I ran at him, punching him in the jaw with incredible inhuman force as he fell to the floor. Don't move, I screamed. Don't say a fucking word. You've broken into the wrong house, buddy. Peering in the darkness, I could see the silhouette of the person laying there on the floor. They began to move. Out of fear for my life, I kicked him in the face. Stay down, I shouted. But he didn't listen. Again, he tried to get up. Mumbling, I took the broken neck of the bottle and forced it into the neck of the intruder. I said stay down, I screamed, walking over to the light switch. I turned on the light and was met by the most horrific sight imaginable. Blood covered my floor, the arm of my sofa, and was pouring out of the neck of the man who had broken into my house. Only this wasn't a man at all. This was a woman. I felt a lump in my throat and my stomach was doing somersaults. The whole room started spinning as I fell to my knees. The whole room started spinning as I fell to my knees. What have I done? Looking over the room, I realized what had just transpired. There were birthday banners hanging around my living room, and a small present sat at my sofa, now covered in the blood of the woman laying on the floor. Collecting myself, a single word left my mouth, the only word I could say at this moment in time. Mom?